I came with an agenda. I was going to sleep with at least 20 women before I settled down. I gave myself a goal.
Hello, I am Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. This week, we are heading to San Francisco to meet creative strategist Nat Gunn. And when I say strategist, I do mean strategist. Moving to San Francisco in 2014, Nat came equipped with a game plan, and she took that very seriously, throwing herself into the dating world. And it was this plan that led her to meet her partner Bridget, and their first date together led them to Virgil's Sea Room, a queer bar on Mission Street that recently closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We caught up to talk about astrology, online dating profiles, and the importance of queer spaces.
I moved to San Francisco in 2014, and it was a very strategic move for me. I'd been living in Portland, Oregon, my hometown, for decades, and was ready for a professional pivot. So I went back to school and chose San Francisco because of its global, international business scene, and let's be honest, the party scene.
Ah, and so it was like a total uprooting of your life.
Yeah, total. It was, for me, both a coming into my own skin and learning who I am in a new setting, in a new career path. It was 100% discovery on a personal level. And I just come from Portland, where I feel like I squeezed the life out of the Pacific Northwest. I rafted all the rivers. I climbed all the mountains.
I thought you were going to say you slept with all the women.
I dated around, and I was like, I need some more ladies. So where might I go? There's a little bit of story here with technology because I'd just been coming out of a long-term relationship, and, I'm 43 years old, so I kind of missed the whole early adoption of online dating.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time I first made a dating profile on an app was, in my mid-30s, and I felt so behind. I was asking my friends, like, oh my gosh, what should I say in my profile? Are these pictures too dorky? And my profile on OkCupid went through many, many different iterations.
But you took it seriously, though. You're like...
Oh, yeah. I'm a strategist. I was like, if I'm going to uproot my life and start over, I'm going to succeed.
So, like, give me a flavor of what the bio said.
Well, it said too much, let me tell you. I wrote a small novel. Many short stories. I said that I was looking to have fun. I loved going out. And I wanted to meet lots of people who could show me around the Bay Area, who could help me understand where to go, who to see, what to wear. I was looking for almost a guide as well as some getting around. And the way that turned out is a good story because I also was using one of their features. I don't think they have it. I recently checked in to see. I was going to write OkCupid and say, here's my success story. Don't you want to feature, me and my partner? But they don't have this feature anymore. But they used to let you search by sun sign in astrology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of astrology. It's been an influence for good in my life. A lot of radical self-acceptance has come through my study of astrology. And so I had also dated around the zodiac a bunch and had some pretty strong assumptions. I thought, I need a Leo. I think the kind of woman who's going to be able to handle me, I'm an Aries, is going to be a Leo. I need someone who's so like dripping with confidence. She doesn't need a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? She just kind of, the world spins around her easily. Mm-hmm. And I'm fiercely independent. Leos are also, and I thought a good partner for me would be that fiery energy. So on OkCupid, I was like, where's like enough mid-30s Leos in the world? Then I narrowed it down to New York, Los Angeles, or San Francisco. Of course, that's where you have the collections of lesbians in this country. And so I decided on the Bay Area, and that's where I applied to business school.
So let me unpack this a bit more. So if someone messaged you on OkCupid and everything was on paper, like perfect, you liked their photos, you liked what they had to say about themselves, but they happened to be Capricorn, I don't know, like some star sign that you didn't think you were compatible with, would you just dismiss them?
I would reach out and invite them to be my friend. I certainly have my dearest friends are all over the zodiac. I don't feel like there's any sign that I wouldn't be able to be friends with, deep friends even. Uh-huh. But in terms of my preferences for a partner and a lover, I knew I needed to be with another fire sign.
Wow. And have you ever been have you ever met someone and got on with them so well that's challenged your thinking around that?
It's not challenged it. It's maybe sharpened it.
Ah, okay.
It's, focused it in, maybe confirmed some of my, I'm always open to challenge. I mean, I work in, the innovation space, kind of on the edge of doing new things. Mm-hmm. And so I love anything that will check my assumptions. But I felt like I just had, all of my experiences were, if anything, confirming my suspicions.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so you are very strategic. I'm just like, does this person want to buy me dinner? All right, let's go.
Well, you're right. It was a long game. So I had come from a career on the stage. I was singing opera. I was singing art song. I was designing and directing musical theater shows, etc. I was on faculty at 2 universities. I'd made a good go of this career as a performing artist and an educator. And when my foot fell apart, I had to have it surgically reconstructed. I had to relearn how to walk in rehab for a year. It was a good time for me to really mine my values and my priorities and to kind of reorganize my life around what was important and what was timely. And so with this move to San Francisco, I did have a lot of guiding principles. I had strong sense of boundaries, a really strong sense of who I wanted to be around and why. I guess it felt like when I turned 35, I woke up and I was like, oh, wait, there's this whole second half of my life I have to think about now. Right? You see your parents start to age and you think, wow, I need to get my marbles in a row here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your parents getting older is really weird and scary. Like my parents live in Australia, so I don't see them gradually getting older. I just see them in like every 3 or 4 years, and it's like, oh fuck, shit.
Yeah,
how did this happen?
Sometimes.
What's going on? Yeah. Oh, it's really scary. So do you remember what your first impressions of San Francisco were?
Yes. very much. Well, let me tell you, my first date was the week I arrived. And I had 10 dates lined up. My online profile was fruitful over the summer leading up to my move. And so when I landed, I had my
Someone
first
picked
date.
you up from the airport.
No, I drove down with my best friend in her truck, and everything I owned was in her horse trailer. I mean, it was like a true pioneer Oregon story. Not as romantic as an airport, but so yeah, that same week, went on a date with a beautiful Leo named Bridget, and we went to a bar in Oakland, and turns out it was her friend's bar, and he came down as soon as she arrived, and we were at the bar, and he didn't know that we were on a first date. He assumed we were friends or whatever. And so he was kind of like grabbing her and being really huggy and physical and embarrassing her. Grabbed her and was like, "Oh, congratulations on opening your sweet shop. It's amazing." And he turned to me and said, "Hey, you've been to her shop, right? What do you think?" But she's like bright red and blushing. She was like, "We just met. We're on a first date." It was very awesome. So I got to kind of see how cool she was through that interaction. We spent the next 3 days together, inseparable, and I canceled all the rest of my dates. And that was 6.5 years ago.
So was she the first then? The first date?
Yes.
Wow. That is a success story for OkCupid. That's incredible.
Right? And Bridget's profile on OkCupid was minimalist, which is very much her style. And our interactions over the summer were also very short and sweet. Like, "Hey, gonna be there in September. Maybe see you around," It wasn't like lengthy Jane Austen exchanges of love. It was, I'm a very physical in-person person. And so with all of my interactions, I was wanting to just get to be in person and feel the vibe. And yeah, so we went to the outdoor First Friday art. All the art galleries open their doors, and there's food and vendors and like a street circus, fire jugglers, and carts of food. It was really a great evening. And then we came back into the city where she lives, where we live now, actually, the same home. And first of all, we came back to her place. This is all improv now, because we thought we were just going for a drink, right? But we're just like, can't stop hanging out. Let's keep going. And so we get here. First of all, she changes her jacket. I was already super impressed with her outfit. I was like, I like your look. We come back over here. It's getting foggy. The city, this is something was new for me. Who knew San Francisco was so cold? So she opens up her closet. She has like 17 jackets. She puts on this really fly jacket. And I was like, this is even better. This is good. And so we walked down 3 blocks to Virgil's.
Aww.
And there we sat on the back patio and just talked. And the scene was really fresh and exciting. And we had our first kiss back in there, sitting on the picnic bench under the heat lamp. It was like the whole world stopped. It was all of a sudden a gauzy, surrounding. There was no one else there but us. It was this magical moment.
Before we talk about that, I just want to skip us back a bit and talk about online dating. So how you've described the way that Bridget communicates and the way that you were communicating, I think is so much better for online dating. Like, I hate when you get into this really intense writing thing with someone, build up all your expectations, and then meet them and you're like, oh, okay. This isn't what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had any experiences like that?
Yes. When I lived in Portland, I went through a little bit of an evolution where I had thought of myself as bisexual. And I mean, this is a common story, I think. And of course, I was, working in the theater, which is very gendered space. You were expected to look like your characters and kind of exude your character's persona, so to say. I had long hair. I was all day full makeup, high heels, push-up bra, very hyper feminine, because that was really expected of me in my industry. When I finally, came into honoring my body and recognizing that I'd had a lot of bad sex with men, it wasn't my fault or their fault. It just turns out I'm gay. And I cut off my hair and I, started slowly transitioning my wardrobe away from being, this voice professor, theater artist to being me. Who was I? It was an interesting transformation that kind of coincided with this time I was telling you my foot fell apart. I was relearning how to walk. Like my whole embodiment of my movement through the time and space was in this warp phase of transformation. When I first started dating, I had no idea how femme I was, because on the inside, I was like, oh, I'm so masculine and I'm just going to go out and be, the gay me that I feel. And so I did have some exchanges with women whom we had, some lots of back and forths, expectations built up, right? And then we would arrive and in person, they would see and feel the vibe of me and be like, oh, I was so naive. I was ready to go to bed with this woman, but luckily I was with women who were honest enough and knew what they'd been on the street as a gay woman longer than I had. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm really not jiving with your, femme forward energy. And so I was coming across differently online than I was in person. And this was something I had to learn through experience. So since I've been now in this mecca of the Bay Area and in queer spaces with hundreds and hundreds of queer women, I see now like, oh yeah, I am really femme. And it's okay. Even though like on the inside, I feel very masculine and macho sometimes, I've learned to step into this queerness.
There's a spectrum, isn't there?
It is. Right. So like my queer expression is, I definitely have a macho attitude and demeanor. I'm the person who will approach someone on the dance floor. I'm the one who will ask to buy someone a drink and have a conversation. I've been like that my whole life. Even as a teenager, I was asking the boys to dances. I was, that cock tease on the dance floor. And so that's just part of my nature. Again, I said I'm an Aries. My Venus and my zodiac, my Venus is also in Aries. So that's kind of a queer positioning.
Oh, explain that to me. I don't
understand. Each sign in the zodiac has a masculine or feminine assignment. And my whole birth chart is very masculine. And especially where your Venus is positioned might explain kind of how you prefer to connect, how you prefer to seek your pleasure. And so my Venus is also in Aries, as is my sun, as is my Mercury. And so I'm very direct. I'm very happy to start and chase and be the one who's brave, asking and
isn't it
initiating.
Funny? Like, I don't want to labor on this too much, but isn't it funny that we view that as masculine?
Right? I know. And there are a lot of this, I think, is going to morph over time. Language and posturing and
our understanding of genders.
Absolutely. It's really, I think, on a pretty steep change curve. But in the lesbian scene, like you're either especially for my age. Now, it's different, I think, for younger people.
But there is a very distinct binary between femme and butch. Is that what you're trying to say?
I wouldn't say it's I would say the shape of that bell curve might be a little bit different than in the hetero space or what have you. It's and this is something I had to come to learn through dialogue with other people and sharing space with other people. What are these vibes? How do you express them in your look, in your mannerism, in your conversation? I hope in the future that it's not just considered masculine or feminine.
And so then when you were going on these dates and meeting people and they were like, you're kind of femme, were you like offended? Were you like, was it just like, oh, I need to process this?
It was so weird, okay, because I had, in the chase of my career, been told again and again that I looked too masculine for my roles. I do. I look like my father. And when I would go to these auditions in New York City with 80 other sopranos trying out for the one coquette role, everyone's conservatory trained. Everyone sings like a goddess.
Yeah.
So what does it come down to? It comes down to how tiny is your waist? How big are your eyes? How sexy are you?
Ample is your bosom.
Yeah, it's very misogynist space in the casting world in entertainment. Probably don't need to explain that to anyone now that the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, all that. So coming from that world, when I tried to step into what I felt like was a more authentic expression of my gender, it was shocking to learn that I was actually quite femme because strangely in that theater space, I wasn't femme enough.
I think that's so fascinating when you're told something so often that you internalize it. And then in another context, you're just completely shook by the fact that you're not that thing that you thought was so core to your identity.
Yeah. So all these years later, I'm comfortable now with it. I've learned how to, buy the tops that say, I'm gay, but also a little femmy, and I'm owning it.
So is that floral prints, colors that are associated?
Yeah. And when I first came out, I rejected that quite a bit. I cut my hair. I mean, what you see in I'll have to explain for those listening, but I've got a really curly mullet going on. And this was a COVID experiment that happened not by choice. I usually wear my hair very, very tight and high, just like I'm at the barber every 3 weeks. High and tight, and on the top, it was also just like maybe in a little coif, yeah, or what have you. But this longer hair has also, this whole COVID hair has given me a trip on my gender sense and expression as well.
Starting to view things differently.
Yeah, I'm stepping out and a little bit more. I'm owning a little bit more even of this femme.
Fascinating
reality.
I've also got like my hair. I've not been to the hairdresser yet, and that's been like a year. So yeah, I've had long hair, and it's like the first time in my life I've ever had long hair.
You know what I'm talking about?
Really, it's really odd just to view yourself in a different way, and like fun to play with, right?
Yeah, super fun. It's my art therapy every morning.
Yeah, like, I mean, it is also fun when you've got a shaved to play with that, like to rub that.
It feels so good. Feels so good. And, at the bar, I can't count how many times a woman would come up and just like, not, without consent, just start rubbing my head.
Yeah, that's not fun, really. So let's go back to Virgil's. So that first time, it was a bit of a whirlwind for you. You were maybe, distracted and thinking of other things. But do you remember that first impression of the bar?
Oh, yes, I do. When you walk in, first of all, there's this great big painting of a ship with many sails, probably, like a 18th century vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, San Francisco has always kind of been kind of that pirate, gold digger, Wild West space. So when I walked in, I was like, oh yeah, this is San Francisco. And there's a great big long bar, red walls. I love red walls. Any place with red walls feels good. Red is my color. And it was packed. You have to kind of shimmy through people, as you're walking along the bar. And then when we got to the back patio, we sat down, and next door to Virgil's is another queer bar. They're literally next door to each other. And it's called El Rio. It's still open. They actually just started doing some limited openings for events there. And El Rio is always hopping. It is loud. It is energetic. People are smashed together. There's a line out the door 2 blocks down. Virgil's, Bridget calls it the adult swim. Like this is where you go if you want a more chill vibe, but you still, right over that fence, you hear the music, you hear the sounds of the laughter, the dancing, the talking. It was interesting for me to like, wow, I can't believe there's 2 amazing places right next to each other. This would never happen in Portland. This would never happen in Seattle, right? So I remember feeling like this almost borrowed yet designed energy that was the combining of those 2 properties.
And so was it like the clientele, was there an overlap in the clientele, or were they very distinct and different?
There's definitely an overlap, and part of it is because the line, I mentioned the line out the door to get in.
Sometimes people give up, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And the line to the bathroom at El Rio is just sometimes impossible. And so a lot of folks, and they were very friendly, a lot of folks would just come over to Virgil's, use the bathroom, hang out, have a drink, or, come upon someone like, oh, hey, we were trying to go to El Rio, but couldn't. Oh, I was too. I'm trying to use the bathroom, but here we are.
Yeah.
I think though, in terms of the size of Virgil's, it's much smaller. It's more intimate. I've been to so many awesome, like Tuesday night birthday parties on the back patio, where definitely I think you could say it was a unique clientele. It's right at the base of Bernal Hill. It's right next to the Mission District, close to where I live, just a few blocks down in Noe Valley. It's this coming together of many iconic working class neighborhoods. And so the folks who enjoyed Virgil's was always a mix. Great tattoos, great hair, great denim jackets. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of old time neighborhood folks who actually live there would frequent Virgil's.
So quite a mixed age group.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love when bars are like that. I think,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, especially in the bigger cities, that's happening less and less. So, okay, I read online that Virgil's was nautical themed. And so instantly I'm thinking that there's like starfishes glued to the wall and anchors like hanging and nets hanging from the ceiling. Please tell me I'm wrong.
Yes, you're wrong. Like I said, there was that great painting when you first walked in the door. And I think the red walls and like the plush seats, the table that might have looked like a captain's trunk, that was more so the
okay.
The
so
vibe.
Less tacky than where I was going. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It wasn't like SpongeBob SquarePants. It was...
I kind of love when a bar is full of tat and crap, but I'm always worried about who has to clean it. There's usually quite a lot of dust. Yeah, there's usually quite a lot of dust like gathering.
Oh, yes.
And it's like, when was the last time someone touched that thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then let's talk about Bridget. So without trying to sound offensive. Oh God, I shouldn't have started the sentence in that way. But it's a very stereotypically lesbian thing to meet once and then spend 3 days together.
Yes. And, both of us had a good 2 or 3 years playing around and having fun, getting to know ourselves again after the end of long-term relationships. So we were cautious. We didn't want to be those lesbians. We wanted to check ourselves and make sure that we weren't going to set ourselves up for heartbreak or, do things quote unquote wrong, all of those dumb cultural pressures we put on ourselves. The first 3 months we were together, it was so electric and fantastic, just magnetic, scary. We were a little bit in denial of how good it was because we thought, we couldn't possibly be this good, only 3 months in. And so about at that time, at that interval, I invited her to come home with me for the Christmas holidays. And I thought, okay, if this is really going to be this good, and if we are going to continue, I thought she'd better come home and see where I come from, meet my people. Because if we are going to go on, if I really am going to fall for this person and make a life with this person, she needs to know my background. And so we did this great big road trip up to Portland, got to see a lot of my friends and family. Also in that interval, just happenstance here in San Francisco, she had loads of her friends from the Midwest. She's from Wisconsin, just about an hour north of Chicago. And I got to see a parade of her friends come through and visit. And that was a fabulous confirmation that she was as awesome as I was. I mean, her friends would pull me aside and be like, do you know how amazing Bridget is? She is so cool. It was also like a little double-edged sword. Like, if you break her heart, I'm going to hurt you. But I was feeling confident but cautious. And I wanted, again, I'm a strategist. I was like, let's get a proof of concept and some data to confirm that this is...
Did you mind map it? Did you get Post-its out?
Yes. Yeah. So after that trip, we kind of admitted how in love we were and decided to cautiously think about what it might look like if we spent the rest of our lives together. And it was about the 9-month mark when I moved in. And we felt like champions. We were like, oh, that's like 9 years in lesbians timeline.
You held out 9 months.
I know.
So then sitting on that patio on that first day, what were you thinking? Like, how did you know?
My body told me. And our conversations had been so rich. And I could sense that there was potential for decades of conversations. There, with some folks, you might explore some topics or speak about and around things enough to know, like, I could deep dive for years on this topic with this person. Or, this shallow exchange is telling me otherwise. So I think it was my body first telling me, and I had to come to trust my body. That's something, as a woman especially, I had been conditioned to disregard my body. So there was that, certainly, body talk, conversation. And I felt so aligned with her professionally as well, because I had come from a craft space and she was in a craft space. And I think craftspeople really understand the obsession that comes with that kind of expertise and building a career around it. It's kind of madness, right? So knowing that she just opened this shop and was so dedicated as a business owner and as a craftsperson, I understood that. I respected that. And I was about to start business school. So I thought, wow, there's so much to explore here in terms of how we could get on. But I was scared. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And I guess, picking up on the point that you've made about listening to your body and trusting your body, had you felt that way physically before?
I had, yes, had many experiences where my body was alive and excited. But this was, for me, a new combination of that, along with the depth and breadth of conversation, as well as my imagination. Here's the difference: is when I met Bridget, it was like my imagination lit up, and I could see the future. I could see that we might really get on for quite a time. And in other experiences, I had been like right in the moment. This is now, this is here, this is short term. And in that moment, I just moved somewhere. I knew that I was going to be here for some time. And I just kind of relaxed into the long game of it, and am seeing how, or feeling rather, how my imagination impacted the power of that conversation and body response. I think was pretty magical.
That's so cool. Yeah, I always find that, especially with internet dating, where you are coming together for one evening, and there's this combination of what I've imagined this person to be prior to meeting them, like what I've projected on them. And then also I need to decide whether I like them within this next hour window. I need to decide if this is something I want to pursue. And it feels like, you're just like the cogs are turning and grinding and like going. So to hear that you were able to relax into that rather than being like, I'm not really sure. They just scrunched up their nose and I didn't like it. Maybe that's it. All that overthinking. That sounds so wonderful. But so then what did you do for 3 days?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a Friday, so you can imagine it was just like this extended weekend. Well, we had amazing sex. We went on long walks around the neighborhood. We had food at a couple of favorite cafes, and I got to see her shop. It was kind of like a dance around her space.
Wow. And where were you living at that time? Had you wait,
I was
you
living
would have had somewhere sorted before you got there. No, knowing you.
I was living in of course. I was living in a cute little old apartment with a roommate in South Berkeley. So it was a good 15 miles between us. And with, Bay Area traffic back then, it was sometimes a 40-minute drive to get back and forth. Or public transport, of course, was also an option, but that would also be 40 minutes.
I live in London, so that sounds like nothing to me. I'm like, that's reasonable.
Right. It's so relative. Our second weekend hanging out was in my new hood. And we went to a dance party in Oakland called Hella Gay. And this was also like kind of a test for me, because the way someone moves their body, the way someone, kind of holds the beat and carries the energy in their body is super duper important and sexy to me. And so we went to Hella Gay. The music was great. The scene was so hopping, and she is an incredible dancer, and I was even more smitten.
Aww. So wait, then, does that mean that on that first night you met in your neighborhood and then went back to her neighborhood in order to go to Virgil's?
Yeah.
So you knew pretty quickly then that you were going to be maybe staying the night.
It's funny because at the time, I don't own a car now, but at the time I owned a car, and she also did. I mean, a great lesbian car. She's got a 2003 Volkswagen Jetta with a ski rack on top. Very lesbian car. But she took public transport over to meet me in Oakland. And we decided to go out to the art gallery walk, and just the evening was getting on and on and on. And, the trains don't flow very well in the evening time.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
I offered to give her a ride home. And yeah, as soon as she said yes, I was like, we're going to sleep together.
Good job, I showered. Oh, I love that feeling of anticipation when it's like, oh, I know this is going to happen, but like, when is it going to happen? When are we going to leave? Maybe I just won't come on too strong. Yeah. Oh, I miss all of that without bars. So then what was that like? I'm just really fascinated about you moving to a new city, kind of trying to eke out your own life, your new life, like all these new things. And then having this is the wrong word, but I'm going to use it anyway, the distraction of a new relationship. So kind of like not, like kind of, it's this space between assimilating into someone else's life, but also like having this need to establish your own life. Was that difficult?
It wasn't for me, but I see how you're framing it as a challenge space. For a lot of folks, it might have been a sense of dichotomy there. But for me, I think because I was so much in support of her professional success, I thought if I'm gonna want to hang out with this person, I have to go put on an apron and sweep her floor. And I did for our whole first year together, spend several hours helping her at the shop. I mean, I sold many of her chocolates. I swept her, mopped her floor. Even though I've got a bad foot, I was on my feet trying to help her get this going. And oftentimes in the service industry, what do you do when you're done? When your shift's over, you go out, you relax. So it was for me very familiar. Same in the theater. When you're done with that show, you sweep up the theater, you mop up the floor, and you go out with your friends for a drink. And so it felt very familiar to me to do that. And there were, though, several times where I went out on my own because I wasn't constantly with her in the shop, but I was, like I said earlier, we're both really independent. There was no worrying that I would go run off with someone else. It was just, she understood I have a need to move my body to a beat. And so often I would take myself out and go dance alone. And in that regard, for me, it was like people watching. And certainly I enjoyed being watched as well. I mean, there's a little bit of that extrovert in me that loves being appreciated. And so, yeah, I didn't feel a challenge there.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, because I think like you can fall into that existential crisis of like, are there things I'm missing out on because I've not like fully explored all these other bits of my new life?
You're right, though. I mean, I came with an agenda. I was going to sleep with at least 20 women before I settled down. I gave myself a goal.
Had you bought gold
So
stars so you could chart them on the wall?
Yeah. And so you're right. I did have to kind of screw my head around that goal and be like, what's more important here? Is it more important for me to like get into the scene and slut it up, or is it more important for me to get in the scene and just period? And so I was able to sink into that new goal, which was just to be out and about, get to know what it looks and feels like to be a lesbian in San Francisco.
What is it like being a lesbian in San Francisco?
Well, there aren't a lot left. in just the time I've been here, there's been this exodus where
The great lesbian exodus.
yes, yes, most women I know now are living in the East Bay. They've gone to places where they can actually afford rent or maybe even, own a home. And that in this city is becoming more impossible. We've got rent control. Luckily, I mean, our landlords, gay couple, elderly couple, been here in the city since the 60s. We love them so much. And they've not been raising our rent, so we luckily have a rent that is, I mean, I hate to use the word affordable because is it? I don't know. But it's not it's not as gouging as other rents in the city.
And so are you seeing then the neighborhoods just becoming more and more homogenized?
Yeah. However, I'm also seeing more of a blend, more of a all people welcome inclusivity that is great, where it's, there are a lot of folks who are in hetero relationships, but might be bisexual or what have you, who are frequenting these spaces as well. And so it's changing, let me just say. And when I first moved here, I did really, really appreciate going out, like I said, to parties that were just for women. It was really how I got to know, through a reflection, almost like holding up a mirror. This is who we are. This is who I am. It's very validating to share space with people who look and vibe like you. And I think it's psychologically really critical for queer people to have spaces like that.
And like a gendered space, what do you learn in the gendered space that you wouldn't learn in a mixed space?
Well, the body language is very different. There's a lot of like intense eye action where across the room you're appreciating someone. In a way, it's a little more subtle, yet if you're not comfortable with eye contact, it can be alarming. I think that there's, the posturing of it. I mean, I'm a trained actress, so I've studied gesture and posture and embodiment. I see characters all around me, and so I couldn't help but notice that gendered spaces do have overall an interestingly different style or choreography, let's say, of movement and interaction.
Do you think that's because people feel freer in those spaces?
Yes. I would say so. There aren't environmental pressures to be anything other than you are, or expectations.
And do you think, like, with having men around or having other genders around, there's more of a policing of your own behavior?
I wouldn't use the word policing, but maybe a different awareness. And when you have like a more multidimensional landscape of reflection and awareness, I think it just feels different. It's not bad or wrong, or it's just different in my mind.
It's really interesting. So let's go back to Virgil's. How did you hear that it was closing?
Oh, it was heartbreaking. It was early in the pandemic when a lot of small businesses, especially the nightlife scene, were starting to speak up. There were funds and financial efforts to try to support the nightclub scene in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And so the owner of Virgil's, she was very familiar with, financial situations that weren't favorable, and spoke out a few times just with like warnings, alert, help, a lot of the
owners of clubs and restaurants were vocal, very vocal, like, hey, can we get some help here? Culturally, San Francisco is so rich. However, with this transformation of population skewing heavily toward young tech workers from outside the Bay Area who don't have cultural relativity or prowess, the conditions in which these clubs can thrive as businesses have been harsh for a long time. And so when the pandemic hit, most of these places were already in a precarious situation with rising rents, with shifting situations. And so I first learned about Virgil's closing on my phone. It was like a news alert from one of the papers I follow. And so it broke my heart. It was, it really felt like a blow. It felt like, oh, this was our place. This is where we had our first date, where we had our first kiss. And now it's gone.
And you never got to say goodbye.
Right.
So what has San Francisco lost with the losing of that venue?
Well, I can start by saying El Rio has lost its overflow. I think the neighborhood here, certainly on the local level, has lost a favorite meeting place. And in the terms of the city, I think it's one more lost space. I feel like it's been a string of them over the past many years. Bridget's been here more than 20 years, and she can tell you how much of this exodus has been going on for years and years. So it's, especially, I think, for queer women, it's one more place that's no longer woman-owned and run. So that's significant in terms of opportunity and potential for modeling, or for, just that general trajectory of small business success. I think it's a shame on our city leaders that they haven't done more. In fact, just this week, the city supervisors have approved a fund that will hopefully provide some rescue measures for small businesses who are the cultural blood of this area. And it's a little bit too little too late, in my opinion. And I'm really disheartened that they didn't do more sooner. It really speaks to how much the scene has fallen away from people's sense of cultural importance. And that breaks my heart.
So what would you say made Virgil's special?
For me, Virgil's was a place where I've always felt I belonged. I never thought that it wasn't for me. I've been to places where, maybe it's the theme of the night, or maybe it's the DJ, whatever tunes are on, can influence your sense of belonging. And for Virgil's, it was 100% I belong there all the time.
Do you have memories of clubbing in San Francisco? Is there anything about today's episode that you want to talk a bit more about? Well, I would love to hear from you. Get in touch and let's have a chat about the show and where we should go next on Lost Spaces. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with the username Lost Spaces Pod. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I have been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the next year. You can hear the first single, Well Grown Boys, which is also playing underneath my talking right now on all good streaming platforms. If you liked this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on Apple Podcasts, or just told people who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.